Hello YouTube, and welcome to episode 2 of the Gui series, part of the modding tutorial series. And in this episode we are going to be covering the various methods you can use in your GUI screen extending class. So the first one that you are likely to use is public void NIT-GUI. Now that takes no parameters and has a capital G, and basically this stands for initialize GUI. So this method will run when you initialize the GUI. So basically when you open the GUI, this is the first thing that will run, and we can check in this class to find in the GUI screen class to find the initialize GUI screen, the init GUI method, which you can see launches in several locations. Yeah, basically it launches first. It's the first thing to launch when the screen opens, and it runs once when the screen opens. So we can just check that we've written this correctly by typing @override. There we go, and no error. So yeah, we have written this correctly. I'm not going to add anything in here. I'm just going to explain what all these methods do in this episode. So then the next main one is public void draw screen, like so. So that has a capital S, and it takes three variables: an integer called I, integer called J, and a float variable called F. Then draw the constructors, and again we can check if we have wrote that right, which we have with the override method. So then a good thing to do in here is type super dot draw screen IJF. Now the reason we do this super thing is super basically means the superclass, which is the GUI screen in this instance. So if we go to our GUI screen class and scroll down to the draw screen method, if we can find it here. I've probably already gone past it. Yeah, I think I've gone past it. Yeah, draw screen. You can see there is something in this constructor. So basically we call this method in the superclass, so it will run this code. And this is running the GUI, drawing the various buttons. So unlike the initialize GUI method, which has nothing in it, this does have something in it, so we need to make sure that code runs so our GUI works properly if we add buttons. Obviously if we don't add buttons it isn't compulsory, but yeah, it's always useful. Then the next method is public void key typed, again with a capital T, and that takes two parameters: a char variable called C and an integer variable called I. Now if you don't know what a char variable is, it basically goes in these, what they're called, like the little dash you put before an S. So say I was typing and these, I put that little dash, I can't remember what it's called, but a char is basically a one, like say I typed C equals, just to get rid of that error. So our char C variable is equal to A. Now if I put a, it wouldn't work. It can only, basically it stands for character, so it's one character long. So that's what a char is. And basically this char variable will be equal to whatever key you press, the char of the key you press on the keyboard. So say if I press the G key, C would be equal to that, etc, etc. And then the integer I variable is equal, if you can look at various Java mapping or Java keyboard mapping, and each key is assigned its own number. So for example, I know that the W key is equal to 17, the A key is equal to, I believe, 30, the S key is equal to 31 and the D key is equal to 32. And also the escape key is equal to 1. So an easy way to do this is if you type keyboard dot, you can see you have all these different key underscore things. So for example, if I find the key E, if I type the letter E, if I type the letter E on the keyboard, basically, alright, let me simplify this down. This method will run when you press a key on your keyboard, and it will pass in the char variable and integer variable for that key. Now, the keyboard class holds a load of methods like this that basically hold the mappings for each key. So I could do an if statement, and I could check if say the I variable was equal to keyboard.key underscore E. So basically this method, this if statement, will pass every time I click the E key, if that makes sense. And again, if we go into the super implementation, you can see that if our I variable is equal to 1, so if you press escape, then it will get rid of the screen. So again, because the method in the GUI screen class has stuff in it, we need to do super.keyTyped and pass in our C and our I variables. So then the next method is public void mouse clicked capital C, and then within that it has 3 variables: an integer called I, an integer called J, and an integer called K. Now the I variable is equal to the current X position of your mouse cursor on the screen. The J variable is equal to the current Y position of the mouse on the screen, and K variable is equal to which button you are clicking. So whether it's middle, like the scroller button if you're clicking that in, the left or the right mouse button. Now I believe the left mouse button is 0, the right mouse button is 1, and the middle scroller wheel, if you click that in, is equal to 2. Now a little thing to note with the I and J, it isn't like if I typed mouse dot get X, that's not what I is. It is actually a little algorithm thing that takes into account the width of the screen, where the mouse is on that screen, and resolutions and stuff. So yeah, so it will give you a pixel representation of the mouse position of X and Y. Then again, if we go to the super implementation of mouse clicked, you can see there is stuff in here. So this is basically handling if you click a button. So we want to super.mouse clicked IJK. Then the next method we're going to look at is public void update screen. Now that takes no parameters, and basically this method will run every, I believe it's every tick. Let me just check. I think it tells me. Code from the main game loop. Yeah, so that will update on every tick. So basically you can do something on every tick within this method. So say you I don't know, you want to update something. So say you're having something on the screen and it moves, and you want to update that like every tick. You'd use this method. So if we just go into our GUI screen class and just check what other methods there are, because I can't quite remember off the top of my head. There's the onGUI close method, which looks like this. So public void onGUI closed which has a capital G and a capital C, and we'll just override that to make sure it's correct. Yes. Basically, this method will run when the GUI closes, so you can say save all your variables when it closes. That would be a useful thing to do. And again, you don't need to do any super things to either of these two methods because there is nothing in them in the superclass. And the only other statement I can really think of is the action performed method. Public void action performed. That takes a GUI button variable, which we will call GB. And yeah, so basically the way this works is every time a button, so you can create buttons within screens, I'll get to that in a different episode, but every time you click this button, this method will run and it will pass the ID of that button to the GUI button thing here. So if I type gb.id, so we can run an if statement. So if the button ID is say equal to 0, then do the following. So I'll get into that a bit more in future episodes, but if we go to the super implementation of that, again there is nothing in the constructor, so you don't need to add any super things. So that pretty much wraps it up for this this tutorial. So I've looked at the main methods of the GUI screen class that you can use when extending it. In the next method we'll look more into the draw screen variable and what you can do with various things. And basically, yeah, so this little series will cover GUI screen. I'll do one covering GUI container and other things like that. But for now, that is the various methods, and thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoy that tutorial. I hope it helps with your coding and modding. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in my next